back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, January 29th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, as always, just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. I hope everybody had a good weekend and enjoyed the games, because that is what we will do. We will recap both championship games from yesterday. We'll start off with the Chiefs and the Ravens. The Chiefs defeating the Ravens 17-10 and advancing to yet another Super Bowl, and I know a lot of fans are thrilled about that outside of Kansas City. Then in the second part of the show, we'll recap the NFC Championship game, the 49ers winning 34-31 over the Detroit Lions, so we'll get into that. Then we'll talk about the Lions and the Ravens, both coming up short, so we'll get into more of that in the third part of the show. Because I know we'll get into that a little bit, of course, recapping the games, but we'll talk about that. And then we'll take a look at the Super Bowl matchup. We'll do an early preview of the Super Bowl 58 matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. So, with that being said, let's get into recapping the first game, which is the AFC Championship game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. So, obviously the Ravens were the 1 seed coming into this game, Chiefs being the 3. This was Patrick Mahomes' second road playoff start. And the Ravens, I mean, we talked about this. They were the better team all year. Obviously, it's been quite some time since Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson faced off against each other. And I did expect a little more scoring in this game, but that was not the case here. The Ravens, they got the ball first, and it was a quick 3-and-out. And I was like, okay, that's not good. And then the Chiefs, they went right down the field on their first drive. 10 plays, 86 yards, almost 6 minutes of time of possession. And Patrick Mahomes connected with, of course, Travis Kelce for a 19-yard touchdown, which was a great throw and catch on both sides. And that led to it being 7-0 early on in the game. And then this is where I thought, okay, here we go. The Ravens, they answered with a touchdown drive of their own. 6 plays, 75 yards, 2 minutes, 43 seconds of time possession. Lamar Jackson connected with Zay Flowers for a 30-yard touchdown. And it was a similar play, because they talked about it on the broadcast, where against Jacksonville, where it looked like Lamar was going to get sacked, and then he threw it to Isaiah Likely, and Likely made a great catch. It was kind of similar, except it wasn't it was a great play, but it wasn't a contested catch by Zay Flowers. Lamar avoided the sack, got out of it, and he lofted it up to Zay Flowers, who got behind the defense, and he scored the touchdown, which tied the game. And you thought, okay, all right, here we go. This is going to be this could be a back and forth game. And then the Chiefs, they answered with a touchdown. This drive was 9 minutes, 16 plays, 75 yards, and Isaiah Pacheco scored a 2-yard touchdown. So that made it 14-7, and then the Ravens' next drive didn't last very long. Lamar Jackson fumbled. He got hit from behind, didn't see it coming, And the Chiefs actually turned it over on down, so that was huge in the game. Kind of a questionable spot on the play before the fourth down that the Chiefs didn't convert. So, well, actually, Travis Kelce did. They showed the replay and he was short, but in the beginning I was like, wow, I thought he might have got the first down there, on 3rd and 9. So then the Chiefs went for it on 4th and 1, didn't get it. So that was big for the Ravens because I thought at that point I was like, all right, well, the way the Chiefs' offense has been looking, they could go up 2 scores here, but that didn't happen. Then both teams punted. The Chiefs kicked a field goal before the end of the first half. That was a 52-yarder by Harrison Butker. So that made it 17-7 at the half, and the Chiefs were getting it to open up the second half. And we're all saying in my group chat, if the Chiefs score here, this game is definitely over. But they punted, then the Ravens punted. I mean, both teams just punted to start the third quarter. Chiefs punted, Ravens punted, Chiefs punted again, Ravens, Chiefs, they both punted. Then the Ravens fumbled, and that was this was the Zay Flowers play. Yeah, so the Ravens quick drive. I mean, they really weren't doing anything offensively. They got 14 yards out of Zay Flowers. They had good field position because there was it was a big long pass play to Zay Flowers for 54 yards. That's right. And then there was a penalty on Zay Flowers taunting. So they got pushed back. Then a 14-yard reception by Zay Flowers. And then from the 9-yard line on 2nd and goal, Lamar Jackson throws it to Zay Flowers, and it looks like they're going to get a touchdown, and they're going to be right back in this game. And he fumbles right before the ball crosses the plane. Chiefs recover it in the end zone, and that's points taken off the board. And the score remains at 17-7. Then the Chiefs punted again. Ravens are driving. 12 plays, 74 yards. You get a 10-yard pass play to Isaiah Likely. And the Ravens actually started from their own 1. So 10-yard pass play to Likely. Lamar scrambled for 9 yards. Then he got sacked for a 2-yard loss. So then they went for it on 4th and 3 from their own 18. Lamar was able to convert that to Odell Beckham Jr., so that was a big play. If they don't get that, the game would have been over there. Then another 8-yard reception by Odell. Big play to Nelson Aguilar for 39 yards. And then for some reason, on second down from the 25, Lamar Jackson throws into triple coverage and gets intercepted in the end zone. And Isaiah Likely was calling for the ball. And Lamar threw it to him and it got picked off. So that was a bad play. That's points left off the board. And earlier in the game, too, they had they could have kicked a field goal earlier in the game too, but then they got pushed back out of field goal range, and they couldn't get 3 points there. So then the Chiefs punted again. Ravens were able to get a field goal on their next drive, so it was a 1-score game, 43-yarder by Justin Tucker. But then the Chiefs were able to ice the game. On 3rd and 9, Mahomes threw it up to Valdez-Scantling for 32 yards, and that was it. And the Chiefs advanced to yet another Super Bowl again. Many fans are thrilled by that. And the Ravens, they come up short. My takeaways from this game, I was very surprised because you go and look at the stats for the game. That's the other thing I wanted to do. So Mahomes went 30-39, 241 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Isaiah Pacheco, 24 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce, a monster game. 11 targets, caught all of them, 11 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown. Valdez-Scantling, 2 catches for 38 yards. Rashee Rice had 8 for 46. They did have 4 sacks in the game, the Chiefs defense had. And then you look on the Ravens side, Lamar Jackson went 20 of 37, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was their leading rusher with 54 yards on the ground. Gus Edwards had 3 carries for 20 yards, and Justice Hill had 3 carries for 3 yards. The Ravens really did not run the ball in this game, and a lot of people are saying this, and I agree with it. They panicked because they were falling behind, and they're like, all right, well, now we got to throw it because we're not going to be able to catch up if we're just running it. But the Ravens' defense played unbelievable in this game. They kept this game close. So the Ravens, they didn't really have to, get away from their game plan, which is running the football, get away from their strength. They could have kept doing that because the Ravens' defense kept getting stops. Because the Chiefs got shut out in the second half. They didn't score any points. And the Ravens only scored 3. Zay Flowers, 5 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. And, of course, the fumble, that was huge in the game. He was frustrated by that. He actually, messed up his finger, they were saying on the sideline, because when he threw his helmet down. But also the taunting penalty, that just, you can't do that in that spot. Nelson Aguilar, 1 receptions for 39 yards. Justice Hill had 4 for 34. A lot of some dump offs in this game. I mean, again, credit to the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs' defense played well. This was a defensive battle, as the game progressed. Because I thought, again, you had the Chiefs going down the field and scoring. Then the Ravens answered after going 3 and out on their first drive, and then the Chiefs scored again. You thought, oh man, this could be back and forth. That just wasn't the case. Again, 3 points were scored in the second half. Odell Beckham Jr. had 3 receptions for 22 yards. Likely had 2 for 16. Mark Andrews had 2 for 15. He came back for this game. Really was the non-factor here. The Ravens actually did get to Mahomes a couple times. 2 sacks on the day. But yeah, and actually at one point during the game, Lamar Jackson was like their second leading receiver, because he threw a pass that got batted up in the air, and then he caught it. And I thought that was another play that he could have maybe broke it for a big gain, but the Chiefs were able to tackle him from behind. And also, they did go for it on 4th down on the first touchdown drive to Zay Flowers, which was a huge gamble early on in the game, but it did pay off. That was on their so it was 4th and 1 from their own 34, and Lamar Jackson got the first down. It was a 21-yard game, and I honestly thought that was another one that he could have broke for a touchdown possibly, but the Chiefs again were able to tackle him. But yeah, this is a same story, different year. The Chiefs, they continue to own the Ravens. Lamar Jackson did not play well in this game. It's just, again, the Ravens, they didn't really run the ball like they should have. Again, the defense was getting stops. And again, I was saying, this is the best Ravens defense that Patrick Mahomes is going to face. And again, they got shut out in the second half. The Ravens defense really stepped up when they had to. They got to Mahomes. After the 2 touchdown drives to start the game, they really settled in. Both defenses really settled in. And there was a lot of quick passes that they were doing. They weren't trying to push the ball down the field. Oh, they were, but it's just they really did not connect. Every time Lamar Jackson did take a deep shot, it was, a couple yards past the receiver that he was targeting. I shouldn't say a couple, but still, he was overthrowing his receivers. But I don't know. I really didn't. I was surprised with how the Ravens came out. Again, you were kind of hoping that they were going to run the football more, which they just didn't do. Because again, I agree. They probably panicked because they thought, oh, all right, we're losing to the Chiefs. We got to now we got to throw it. But the game never really got out of hand. The Ravens defense kept it close. It's just the Ravens just could not get it done when they had to, and they beat themselves with penalties. I know a lot of people were complaining about the penalties in the game. I thought pretty much, the flags, the penalties were the right calls. It's just, you saw that the Chiefs weren't getting as much flags as the Ravens were. A lot of people are upset about, and Kyle Van Noy got called for a penalty, for hitting Travis Kelce in the face with his helmet. After Kelce was kind of starting with the Ravens, there was a lot. It was very chippy, even before the game, because you had Justin Tucker warming up, where the Chiefs were warming up. And Kelce threw away his helmet and his the footballs that he was, I guess, going to use, and then also the thing he had with it that he puts the ball on. They just were throwing that, and it was chippy early on, even before the game. But yeah, the Ravens, they beat themselves in this game ultimately. That's really what it comes down to, and that's really what was going to be their downfall, is them beating themselves, and that's what they did in this game. They just dumb penalties, and again, they just went away from their game plan, and ultimately that's what led to them losing this game. And the Chiefs, they move on to yet another Super Bowl, and obviously we'll continue to talk about this later in the show. The Chiefs once again in the Super Bowl again. And the Ravens, their season is over. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the NFC Championship game now between the 49ers and the Lions. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about the 49ers Lions NFC Championship game. The 49ers coming back from 24-7 and winning 34-31 over the Lions. Very entertaining game. The Lions got off to a quick start here. They took the ball right down the field on their first drive. I mean, the drive didn't even last 2 minutes. They went right down the field, 4 plays, 75 yards, and this was a 42-yard run, end-around play by Jameson Williams. And you could see this guy can make plays. The Lions they're looking for that second receiver. Josh Reynolds has made plays, but Jameson Williams, they're expecting big things out of him, and he, on this play, he shows you what he could do with that speed. And, that got the Lions off to a roaring start, as you could say. Bad joke by me. But anyways, so, yeah, they put the Lions up 7-0. 49ers, then they went down the field, and they looked like, okay, they're going to score points here. And probably one of the weaknesses of the team that not really talked about is their field goal kicker. Moody missed a 48-yard field goal, and, that just wasn't good. Not a good start for the 49ers. And then the Lions answered with yet another touchdown. They went 11 plays, 62 yards, 5 minutes, 20 seconds of time of possession down the field. And David Montgomery scored a rushing touchdown from 1 yard out. So, again, 14-0 Lions in this game. And it's like, okay, now again, it doesn't get any easier for the 49ers. I mean, last week they're trailing against the Packers. Now, they got to come back against the Lions here. They got a touchdown on their next drive. Christian McCaffrey from 2 yards out. I mean, no surprise. I mean, it's automatic that he's going to score a touchdown every week. It's unbelievable. Then in the second quarter, the Lions, they punted, and then Brock Purdy threw an interception. So that put the Lions in good field position, and they cashed in, scoring a touchdown. That led to a Jahmyr Gibbs 15-yard touchdown. And I'm sitting there going, oh boy, this is not good for the 49ers. And then they punted the Niners. I mean, that drive was really quick. Only 55 seconds that drive, and it lasted for 3 plays. And then the Lions, again, 5 minutes almost, a time of possession, and that led to a Michael Badgley field goal from 21 yards out. So it was 24-7 at the half. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know if the 49ers are going to come back. I don't know if they're going to be able to. They did open up the second half with a field goal, so it was 24-10. Yeah, the second half just took a turn for the worse for the Lions. So then the Lions on their first drive of the second half, so the 49ers get points. And one of the biggest criticisms of Dan Campbell, and it's going to be talked about, throughout the week and on today's show as well, is the fact that he is too aggressive. And this came back to bite him, because it was 4th and 2 on the 49ers 28. Now, you're up 2 scores. You kick the field goal, you're up 3 scores again. It's the NFC Championship game. You got to take the points here. You just have to. You got to swallow your pride and say, you know what, we got to take the points here. But they didn't do that. Now, Josh Reynolds should have made that play. Should have caught that pass, but he did not. Niners get the ball back. 17-yard pass play to Deebo Samuel, and then big chunk play. Brock Purdy completes a 51-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk. Now, it looked like it was going to get intercepted, but then it got batted up in the air, and Ayuk was able to catch it on the rebound, and there was a penalty on the play. Well, there was a flag thrown on the play, but yeah, Ayuk catches the pass, and that sets the 49ers up at the Lions' 4-yard line. And Brock Purdy then connected with Ayuk again for a 6-yard touchdown. I'm pretty sure there was a flag, but I don't know why I guess it wasn't labeled here. But anyways, yeah, so Ayuk caught the pass on the rebound off the deflection, and then he catches a 6-yard touchdown. So that's a 1-score game. Lions get the ball back, and literally the first play of the next drive, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles. And it's like, all right, well, now all the momentum is to the 49ers. Brock Purdy scrambled for 21 yards, and then it set up a Christian McCaffrey 1-yard touchdown to tie the game. I mean, this game just changed in a hurry. I mean, the lead evaporated so quickly for the Lions after Dan Campbell went for it on 4th down. So then the Lions punted again, and then the Niners turned that around and scored a field goal. Jake Moody kicked a 33-yard field goal. So it was 27-24. And then the Lions, they turned it over on downs. It was 4th and 3 from the 49ers 30. They went for it, didn't get it. And then the Niners cashed in. They scored another touchdown. Big plays by Purdy scrambling for 21 yards, and then McCaffrey a 25-yard run. And then that set up an Elijah Mitchell 3-yard touchdown. So that put him up 34-24. And then the Lions, they scored a touchdown to make it 34-31. They had to use a timeout. They actually tried to run the ball, but they had all 3 of their timeouts. So if you get it there, if you get the touchdown there and you still got your 3 timeouts, you still have a chance to get the ball back even if you go for the onside kick. So yeah, Jameson Williams a 3-yard touchdown reception. They go for the onside kick. They don't get it. There was a penalty, illegal touching, and then the Niners, they just iced the game, and that was it. They actually did run the ball. I think a couple times. Yeah, a couple times. I mean, you're risking a fumble there. But that ended up not happening. They iced the game, and that was it. The 49ers win that game. Jared Goff went 25 of 41, 273 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. The Lions ran the ball for almost 200 yards in this game, which I said, I was like, I think they're going to run the ball well here, and that's exactly what they did. But I felt like in the second half, it wasn't the same. They went away from the run, I felt like. Similar to the Ravens. But I don't know. At least that was just me. They got off to this hot start, and then they cooled off in the second half. Only scoring 7 points in the second half. I mean, yeah, the Niners outscored them 27-7 in the second half. But yeah, David Montgomery had 93 yards rushing and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had 45 yards rushing and a touchdown. Jameson Williams had 42 yards rushing. Sam Laporta was their leading receiver, 9 receptions for 97 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 7 for 87. Jameson Williams 2 for 25 and a touchdown. Josh Reynolds had 1 for 25. Jahmyr Gibbs had that costly fumble. Malcolm Rodriguez had the pick on Purdy. The Lions defense had 2 sacks in this game. And then for the 49ers, Brock Purdy went 20 of 31, 267 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Christian McCaffrey had 20 carries for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Deebo Samuel had 8 for 89. Brandon Ayuk had 3 for 68 and a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey had 4 for 42. Kyle Juszczyk, a couple of receptions in this game, 2 receptions for 33 yards. George Kittle, quiet game, 2 for 27, and Juwan Jennings, 1 for 8. Armstead had the fumble recovery, and 49ers defense had 2 sacks in this game. But what's going to be talked about is Dan Campbell and him being overly aggressive in this game. You got to take the points. You just have to. Because if you do that, this game probably goes to overtime. And then who knows? But, yeah, I mean, also the Lions, they only scored 7 points in the second half. And, it came at the very end of the game. I don't know what happened. I mean, they were running the football well in the first half. I don't know what... Again, you scratch your head. And I said it. I thought that they were going to be able to run the football well, and they did. I mean, they ran the ball for almost 200 yards, but most of that came in the first half. I mean, the Lions, they really were. They were there. They had the game, but they just let the 49ers come right back in. Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles. I mean, you almost have a pick, and then Brandon Ayuk catches it off the rebound. That was a big chunk play. I mean, that lead just disappeared so fast. And, the Lions, unfortunately, they're going home after a Cinderella season for them. And as for the 49ers, listen, You could say whatever you want about Brock Purdy, but they came back. They came back in this game, so you got to give them credit. You got to give him credit. I know people like to call him a game manager, which I understand. I get it. And again, and for me too, I'm not going to sit here and say, and I've been saying it, I don't look at him as a top-tier quarterback. But you know what? They've gotten the job done. They have had back-to-back comeback wins now against the Packers and now against the Lions. The Lions one was, the bigger deficit. Just seemed like the Lions just collapsed. I mean, the next drive, all right, let's get something going here. Let's answer the touchdown. And immediately Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles. And then again, Dan Campbell, you can't do that. You can't be, aggressive in that situation. Because again, this is the NFC Championship game. All right, I can understand against the Cowboys, all right, we're kind of locked into the 3rd seed. I mean, they could have got the 2 seed. They had the chance, but it's just that's a regular season game. Here it's a trip to the Super Bowl. You got to take the points there. Now, he did say after the game that this could be our only shot. That's what Dan Campbell said to the team. I mean, listen, I think this Lions team is gonna be back. This team will be good again next year. But yeah, I mean, you never know. It's different year to year. You don't know what can happen. Although you look on the other side with the Chiefs, and they just seem to keep rolling, no matter what year it is. And I said this too. Listen, I liked, in the beginning of the Brandon Staley era with the Chargers, when he was overly aggressive, and the Chargers, they had that game they won. The first year, they had that game they won against the Chiefs where they were going for it on 4th down constantly, and they were converting. It was like, wow, this is great. This is awesome. But then it started to get old, and it started to cost the Chargers games, and now look where we are a couple of years later, and Brandon Staley's out of a job. And listen, Dan Campbell's a better head coach. Dan Campbell has had a better team. This team went all the way to the NFC Championship game. Brandon Staley, in his tenure with the Chargers, they had a 27-0 lead, and they collapsed and lost to the Jaguars last year in the first round of the playoffs. So, but I'm just saying, sometimes it's not good to be overly aggressive, and it kind of came back to bite the Lions a little bit. Now, again, the second half, it was a tale of 2 halves, of 2 different games in 2 different halves. That's what it was yesterday. It was an entertaining game to watch. But it's just kind of sad for me because I feel like we see these comebacks a lot now. Ever since the Falcons-Patriots game in the Super Bowl, I'm just not impressed by these comebacks. Because it keeps happening, and it happened again. I mean, again, the Niners, give them credit, down 24-7. And they were able to come back. They took advantage of the Lions making mistakes, and when Brock Purdy had to make plays, he did, and he made plays with his legs. Had a couple of big scrambles in this game. So now the Niners, they advanced to the Super Bowl, and they'll be taking on the Chiefs, which that was a matchup that we saw back in the 2019-2020 season. So we'll see that again. But yeah, give the Niners credit, and a sad ending to the Lions season, but congratulations to them on a great season, and hopefully they can rebound next year, and maybe Dan Campbell can adapt a little bit, and maybe pull back a little bit on the aggressiveness, especially in these big games, because again, came back to bite him, so before we go into our second break of the show, I just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll actually continue to talk about the Lions. We'll talk about the Ravens. Their season's both coming up short, and what is next for both of these teams here in the offseason. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, okay. I don't know what happened with the camera. All right, so we're going to have to fix that. We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about the Ravens and the Lions coming up short. So that came out of nowhere. So obviously these two teams came to their seasons came to a disappointing end in different ways. Let's see if that worked. Okay, we're good. All right. Yeah, we had the Spider-Verse stuff going on with the camera. But anyways, yeah, and we were actually doing good these last few shows. It wasn't happening, but out of nowhere, just I don't know. It happens. It happens. So we just got to deal with it. But anyways, so yeah, these two seasons came to an end in different ways, of course. With the Ravens, I mean, they didn't play to their strength on offense. I mean, they weren't really running the ball like you expected. With the Lions, again, they were overly aggressive at times. They got shut out in the second. Well, they didn't get shut out in the second half, but they were overly aggressive at times. They didn't run the football like they did in the first half. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the offseason. And I honestly, for the Ravens, and really for a lot of teams in the AFC, there's things that you could do to improve the team. But, I mean, the Chiefs are becoming that they're becoming the next Patriots dynasty, where it's just like every year, it's just the Chiefs are always going to be one of the teams at the end. And this was a year where I just did not expect the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. It didn't look like that was going to be the case. And we got to the playoffs and they just turned it on. And now they're back in it again. I mean, for the Ravens and the Bills, those teams, like coming up short against Kansas City every year, it's like I don't like, what can they do? I mean, the Ravens, this team was loaded from top to bottom. They surrounded Lamar Jackson with more playmakers, with Zay Flowers, and you also bring in Odell Beckham Jr., who's not the same player he once was, but again, like, that's an improvement over what they've had. And Isaiah Likely, their young tight end, he's making plays with Mark Andrews being out. And Mark Andrews was back for this game. Again, not really a factor, but still, and the running game, although, he dealt with injuries all year, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill were getting the job done for the most part. And of course, the defense. I mean, how many times have people said every time the Ravens and the Chiefs would face off, well, they got, the secondary's not good and injuries. Now you had this loaded defense, which came to play yesterday. I mean, that defense got stops when they had to. After the first two touchdown drives, the Ravens defense was unbelievable. I mean, yeah, then the Chiefs kicked another field goal. But still, you held the Chiefs, you shut the Chiefs out in the second half. And when the Chiefs had to make plays, then they did. When they had to ice the game, they did. That's the thing. That's the other thing too. Like they did not give the Ravens anything. They were like, we're just gonna, our defense is playing well, so we're not going to, risk anything. And until the Ravens start doing things on offense, we'll start opening up the offense again. So we're just gonna play conservative, and that's what they did. And again, the Ravens defense, they played well. They got stops when they had to. The Chiefs weren't really risking anything, but still, the Ravens defense, they showed up. The offense was a disappointment. I mean, again, Gus Edwards has 3 carries. I mean, you're not trying to push a lot of quick out plays to the wide receivers. I mean, they weren't really. I mean, they were just off. And, you could say, well, playoff Lamar came back for this game because he did not play well here. Outside of that first touchdown drive, I mean, this, it just, the Ravens beat themselves. The Zay Flowers fumble. They had opportunities to get, Justin Tucker to make a couple more field goals, but it just didn't happen, and I don't know where you go from here. I don't, because you had it. You were the number one seed. You had the game at home. You have a great defense. Lamar Jackson, MVP candidate. Probably going to win the MVP. And you come up short. So to be honest, I don't really know what you do. I really don't know what you do for the Ravens. I mean, obviously you want to keep all these guys together and try to run it back next year. Because, if this team's healthy next year, they're going to be back in this spot again. They'll be in the playoffs. But, next year, again, the conference is going to be better. The conference is going to be better. It was competitive this year. It's going to be competitive next year. Because you're going to have Joe Burrow coming back. The Browns hopefully get a healthy Deshaun Watson back. The Steelers are going to be there. The Colts and the Texans, they're not going anywhere. You think the Jags are going to be better. I mean, you look at the AFC West. I mean, we'll see what the Broncos do. The Chargers just brought in Harbaugh to be their next head coach. The Raiders played better in the second half. I mean, listen, I think the Ravens are better than a lot of these teams. But still, conference is going to be more competitive. And the Chiefs, listen, Lamar Jackson said it, in not recently, but at least I don't think it was recently. I think it was one of the previous meetings. But yeah, the Chiefs are their kryptonite. I mean, you go back to the last matchup before this one. Listen, the Ravens won that game, but the Chiefs kind of gave that game away. Again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble the ball at the end of that game. I'm pretty sure, the Chiefs, they get into field goal range. Harrison Butker kicks a field goal. And, that Chiefs win that game and they win here. Lamar Jackson is winless against Patrick Mahomes. And this was the best team that he has had so far. And couldn't get it done. You could look at the play calling, but, and obviously, when the fumble in the beginning of the game, I mean, you didn't see that coming. He had no idea that was coming. He got hit, ball came out, and they were fortunate that it didn't lead to any points, but, it just, and it just seemed like every time they were going to get something going, something would happen that would set them back. I mean, you have the big play to Zay Flowers, then the taunting penalty, and then it looks like you're going to get a touchdown, and then Zay Flowers fumbles, and the Chiefs get it. Chiefs recovered in the end zone. Penalties, and I know people were saying that the referee for this game, he likes to, call penalties on the home team more than the away team, and it did happen. I don't know. I felt like there were a couple times where there should have been maybe a flag thrown in the Ravens' favor, but that just didn't happen. But again, the flags that were thrown against the Ravens, I mean, they were the right calls. I mean, Patrick Mahomes got punched in the face on one of the penalties. It's just the Ravens were not disciplined. And again, they beat themselves yesterday. You could say whatever you want about the script and all this, but no, the Ravens beat themselves. Lamar Jackson did not play well in this game. They didn't run the football. They beat themselves in this game. You can't say it was because of the officials. You know what? Then put up more than 10 points. Seriously, you're at home. You've been great all year. Put up more than 10 points. And you couldn't do that. You could not do that. So, I'm kind of at a loss of what the Ravens can do. You had a good team this year. You had the team to get it done. Came up small. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, this team, if they're healthy next year, they're going to find themselves back in this position. But, it's the Chiefs are their kryptonite. That's what, and Chiefs are a lot of teams' kryptonite in the postseason, except for the Bengals. So, the Ravens come up short. We'll see what happens for next year. And then on the Lions side, there's a couple of things that obviously the defense is something that I think they got to prioritize, adding some more talent there, maybe getting another receiver. Again, we saw what Jameson Williams can do, that big play to open up the game yesterday, but we're looking for that consistency out of him. Obviously with the running game, I mean, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, a great 1-2 punch for them. And obviously they have their quarterback in Jared Goff. The Lions are going to be a good team next year. The one thing is, though, and they said this on the broadcast, so Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions. I don't want to get him confused with the other offensive coordinator that was with the Eagles, Brian Johnson. There's Brian Johnson and Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson for the Lions. So it looks like he's the favorite to get the Commanders job. So they're going to lose him. And that's, I mean, listen, we look, and I just talked about the Eagles. You saw what happened when the Eagles lost their coordinators. You lose him. What's the Lions offense going to look like next year? Is it going to take a step back? I mean, I still think they're going to be a good team. Although their division is going to be more competitive, you would say. The Bears improved towards the end. Look at what the Packers were able to do, making the playoffs, winning a playoff game, getting to, having almost defeating the 49ers. We would have had a 49ers-Lions NFC Championship game if the Packers held on. And that would have been at Ford Field. And then, of course, the Vikings, if they bring back Kirk Cousins, it's going to be a competitive division next year. It is. But, like I said, I think the defense needs some work, but also I think Dan Campbell needs to adapt a little bit. Listen, I love Dan Campbell as a head coach. I'm happy. I'm really happy with what he's been able to do for the Lions organization. The fact that they got to the NFC Championship game is unbelievable. They really turned this team around. Him and Jared Goff and the front office as well. They've done an excellent job. But you got to be able to adapt a little bit. You got to swallow your pride. You got to take the points in some spots, because this could lead to your downfall. This can, because I said I brought up Brandon Staley because, again, Brandon Staley did not get nearly as far. I mean, he did get to the playoffs, but they collapsed. Did not get as far as Dan Campbell has, and the Lions have been a better team than the Chargers. Well, at least this year they were, but they got to a championship game. But listen, that stuff can come back to bite you, man. That could get old, and that could cost you games, and before you know it, you're going to be in a tailspin. So I don't know if he's going to. I don't think he's going to change that, because that's just who he is. But that's just something that I think that he's got to learn. That at times, listen, you got to take the points, because it could cost you, and it costed them yesterday. So I mean, the AFC is different. The NFC, I feel like the conference is kind of wide open. I don't think that there's really not that team. I mean, I know the 49ers, obviously, they're back in the Super Bowl again. I mean, they've made the championship game the last, 3 years now, for the last 5 years. But, I don't really, I feel like that conference is more wide open as opposed to the AFC. The AFC is just, I mean, the Chiefs right now are the team to beat in that conference. And, they've won their Super Bowls. On the other side, that really hasn't been the case. I mean, you had the Bucks with Brady, the Rams with Stafford, but it just seems like it's a different team each year, pretty much getting back to the Super Bowl. So, right now in the AFC, it's different. It's like, all right, how are we going to beat the Chiefs? NFC, it's like, all right, who's it going to be this year? Even though the 49ers have kind of been like the runner-up in the NFC the last couple of years. But, I mean, we saw, listen, the 49ers have their flaws. They do. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, for both of these teams, I mean, disappointing ends to their season. For the Lions, I mean, they had the game. This is a game they should have won, but they kind of self-destructed in the second half. Once again, they don't get that fourth down. Josh Reynolds doesn't catch that pass. I mean, the momentum just shifted. Ayuk makes that crazy catch, and then Gibbs fumbles. They get a touchdown. I mean, it's just the momentum shifted like that. It was crazy. For the Ravens, they just offensively they just could not get anything going, and they beat themselves. Penalties and mistakes, turnovers. A Lamar Jackson interception in the triple coverage, Zay Flowers fumbling. I mean, those are points. You got to score there. And it just, that was not the case. So, yeah, I mean, again, we'll see what happens in the offseason. But, hey, they both had good seasons. So, and they will, they'll be back they'll be back in this position next year. Well, I don't know about the championship, but they'll be back in the playoffs, I would say, for next year, even though that's very early to say and things can happen. But so with that, we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll actually take a look at the Super Bowl, an early preview of that, 49ers, Chiefs. We'll talk about that when we come back from our final break of the show. So, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And again, for some reason, my camera just decides to act up right as I go to break. So, again, we got to fix that. I don't understand why this keeps happening. It's just like you can't make any sudden movements, because if you like if I touch, where it's plugged in, it's just gonna turn off. So that's exactly what happened. But again, it's not a huge deal. So let's get into this Super Bowl preview here. So obviously these teams did face off, like I said, back in the 2019-2020 season. That was Patrick Mahomes' first Super Bowl ring. The Chiefs had to come back in that game. They were down 10. And, Mahomes hit Kelsey for a touchdown. Then you had that big, actually I think the Tyreek play on 3rd and 15, right? That set up the Kelsey touchdown. Then they got another touchdown. Damian Williams scored that. Then they scored again. Damian Williams scored another rushing touchdown, and the Chiefs won that game. And obviously you go back to the Jimmy Garoppolo play where he just missed Emmanuel Sanders. That could have been a touchdown. Most of the players from that 49ers team are still on this team. Obviously it's different now. Brock Purdy is now the quarterback. So, it's going to be a little different. And obviously there's no Tyreek Hill to, throw a Hail Mary up to on 3rd and 15 for the Chiefs. But and on social media, I mean, it's just, first of all, I guess the 49ers have, again, it's different for me being on the East Coast, but I guess for a lot of people, the 49ers fan base is irritating because people are like, I'm not watching the Super Bowl. This is the Super Bowl that nobody wanted. I'm just like, people just love to complain. I get it. Like, I get with the Taylor Swift stuff, and I understand the Chiefs constantly making it back to the Super Bowl and getting to this point. I get it. But, everybody's just complaining. Enough already. And I get it. Because, you go back to the Patriots. It's the same thing. Everybody's complaining constantly. Oh, man, we got to see them again in the championship game. Yeah. Well, you know what? These teams should beat them. The Ravens, you had your shot. The Lions, you had your shot. And you didn't, more so the Lions, because they were up by 3 scores. The Ravens, their offense was just not good, and they beat themselves. You have the opportunity to be, but they were at home. They were the 1 seed. They were the better team all year. They still lost. It's just that people are complaining. Enough already. It's just, whatever. I honestly, for me, I like this Super Bowl matchup. You got Patrick Mahomes and, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, against this 49ers defense with all their stars, on defense and especially on offense, of course, the Avengers, that everybody calls them when it comes to, talking about Brock Purdy. For me personally, like, I want to see the 49ers win because I think the players on that team deserve it. They've had a bunch of cracks at it over the last several years, and they've come up short. I want to see. I think those players deserve a ring. And say whatever you want about that. but that's what I believe. But, I mean, listen, I talked about the 49ers and, some of the cracks that I've been seeing in their defense, particularly in the running game. And, we've seen how Isaiah Pacheco's been running the football for the Chiefs lately. The Chiefs can find success there. And the other thing, too, is the 49ers back end. That if, the Chiefs have done a good job at protecting Patrick Mahomes. I mean, their offensive line is unbelievable. We're far away from, that Super Bowl against the Bucs where he just was running for his life the entire game. The Chiefs really did a good job at addressing that. Although they did have to, make a switch because Orlando Brown did leave. So they had to, sign, who was it? Was it Jawan Taylor, right? From Jacksonville? Because Orlando Brown went to the Bengals. Yeah, I mean, they did a great job at, fixing that offensive line. They were without Joe Tooney, for the game against the Ravens, which you thought was a huge loss there. But it just didn't really matter. I mean, the Ravens did finally get home and sack Mahomes. But, the offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in the league. So Donovan Smith at left tackle, and then you got Jawan Taylor at right tackle, and then you got Trey Smith. Tooney was out, so you had Allegretti stepping in for him, I believe. And then, of course, you got Creed Humphrey, who was one of the best centers in the league as well, who they drafted a couple years ago. Right? This is what, Creed Humphrey's third season? Right? But yeah, I mean, either way, I mean, the offensive line has just been, whether it's a second or third year, the Chiefs did a great job, fixing this offensive line. Might be his third year now. But anyways, yeah, I mean, the offensive line has been great for the Chiefs. And listen, the 49ers pass rush, yeah, they've had some problems trying to get to the quarterback. And that's going to be crucial in this game because now you got Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL, you have to face. So, if the 49ers don't get pressure on Mahomes and get him off his spot, not that it really, Mahomes can make plays with his legs too. It's going to be an issue. And on top of that, you look on the other side, the Chiefs' defense has been good all year. And Brock Purdy, these last two games has gotten off to a slow start. And listen, they came back against the Lions, which I thought if they fell behind, they weren't going to come back. But if now you're playing against the Chiefs, and if you fall behind against this team, the Chiefs don't really blow leads often. Now they did against the Bengals a couple years ago in the championship game when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, but they're a team that they don't blow leads, and it's a Super Bowl now. It's different. You talk about playoff, regular season to postseason football is different. Then you get from regular postseason to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's still the postseason, but I mean, Super Bowl is a big deal. It's a really big deal. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be too big for Brock Purdy. I mean, I don't think so. But, yeah, it's going to be I don't really like this matchup for the 49ers. This is a team that I want to see win the Super Bowl, but it's going to be really tough. It is going to be really tough because the Chiefs are in that postseason mode right now. And, it's just they are a completely different team than they were in the regular season. Again, it really just didn't seem like they were going to make it this year. But they got to the postseason and they turned it on, and they're back in this spot once again. But you know what? And again, everybody's just complaining about it because, we got to see more Taylor Swift and we got to see more of Mahomes and Kelsey and the other thing too is I did not like the stuff before the game with throwing away Justin Tucker's equipment. I wasn't a fan of that. I was not. Now again, I'm confused as to why he was. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know the context. That's something that we also got to look at. Is what's the context? Why was he there first? Again, I don't know. But again, that's what kickers do. I mean, remember when I think was it Robbie Gold? He would it didn't really matter, what was going on around him. Like halftime show, whatever. He's just still kicking his field goals, getting his warm ups in. Like it's just I don't know. Kickers do this. Some kickers just do that. But yeah, I wasn't really a fan of that. Yeah, I mean, actually, what I did want to get into is, but yeah, that was just people complaining about the Chiefs and me just not liking, the pregame stuff. Actually, these two teams did meet last year. They did meet. Brock Purdy did play in this game a little bit. The Chiefs won that game. This was in San Francisco. The Chiefs won that game 44-23. Mahomes went 25 of 34 for 423 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Chiefs ran the ball for 112 yards. McCole Hardman had 2 rushing touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns. I don't know why I said it like that, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a rushing touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco was the leading rusher, 43 yards on the ground. Mahomes had a 91.9 QBR and a 132.4 QB rating in the game. Juju Smith-Schuster, who will not be playing in this game because he's no longer on the team, he was actually the leading receiver, 7 receptions for 124 yards and a touchdown. Valdez-Scantling had 3 for 111. Kelsey had 6 for 98. McCole Hardman had 4 for 32 and a touchdown. Sky Moore had a fumble in this game. Oh, wow. Chiefs had 5 sacks in this game. Couple of interceptions. But yeah, that's on the Chiefs side. Then on the 49ers side, Brock Purdy actually played in this game, threw a pick. He went 4 for 9 for 66 yards. Jimmy Garoppolo went 25 for 37 for 303 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. 49ers ran the ball for 101 yards in total. Jeff Wilson was their leading rusher with 54 yards. McCaffrey only had 38, but they were trying to ease him into the offense because I think this was the first game that he played in after he was traded from the Panthers. George Kittle was their leading receiver, 98 yards and a touchdown. Ray McLeod had 65 yards and a touchdown. Was there no? Oh, no, there was Deebo Samuel in this game. He had 5 receptions for 42 yards. Brandon Ayuk had 7 for 82. Garoppolo lost a fumble in this game. 1 sack by the 49ers in this game, and that was by Nick Bosa. Talanoa Ufanga, he had an interception in this game. I apologize if the first name I again mispronounced. I could pronounce the last name Ufanga, but yeah, Ufanga had a pick in this game, but he won't be playing because he got hurt earlier in the season. So yeah, again, different year, but what's the thing that we've been talking about is the 49ers back end is a problem, and also the running game. The run defense, that's been an issue these last 2 games. I mean, almost 200 yards rushing to the Lions. Aaron Jones had over 100 yards in the game last week. Last week against the Packers. So, I really don't like this matchup for the Niners. Now, again, we got 2 weeks to talk about this. Because this, next week is just the Pro Bowl festivities with Eli Manning and Peyton Manning leading the AFC and NFC teams. Which, I like it. I like that's what they're doing. But, who's really going to pay attention to that? I mean, there will be people that will. I mean, I might watch it for a little bit just because it's Peyton and Eli, but I'm not really going to be paying close attention to that. So we got 2 weeks to talk about this game. But these are my early thoughts, and they're not really going to change. Again, I'm going to be rooting for the 49ers. I want them to win, but it is going to be a tough game. It really is, because the Chiefs are coming in hot, too, especially. So, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the show for today. A very show went very fast, but you know what? Recapping the games and talking about these teams, it's going to do that. So, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll talk about this game more and some other stuff as well throughout the week as we Super Bowl's now in a couple weeks. We'll continue. Like I said, we're going to talk about this game for the next 2 weeks, so you get sick of it. But That's what we're going to have to do. So until then, until tomorrow, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. And again, like I said, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.